Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Was there no sound?
No, no, Prabhu.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for letting me know. See, okay. Should be.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Here we go. Okay. Now there's sound, right? There's sound now.
Yes, Prabhu, yes.
Vaishnava Guru, Yara Saguru, Dase Guru,
Oh, hey Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara,
Edase Karuna Kari. Diyapada Chaya Sodohe Amaya.
Diyapada Chaya, Sadaya Maya,
Diyapada Chaya Sodohe Amaya. Tomara Charana Dhore. Tomara Charana Dhore.
Chaya Vega Domi, Chaya Dosha Shodhi, Chaya Guna Deho Dase.
Jaya Vega Domi, Jaya Dosa Sodhi, Jaya Guna Deho Dase. Jaya Guna Deho Dase. Jaya Satsanga Deho He Amare. Jaya Satsanga Deho He Amare. Jaya Satsanga Deho He Amare. Ushechi Sangero Ashe.
Ekakiya Mara Nahi Payabala, Harinam Sankirtane.
Ekakiya Mara Nahi Paya Bala, Harinam Sankirtane. Harinam Sankirtane. Tumi kripa kore Shadavindo diya. Tumi kripa kore Shadavindo diya. Tumi kripa kore Shadavindo diya. Deho Krishna nama dane. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna boli.
Ami to Ganga, Krishna Krishna boli.
Ami to Ganga, Krishna Krishna boli. Gaitava paje paje. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Vedase Karuna Kori. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Vedase Karuna Kori. Vaishnava Thakura, Vaishnava Thakura, Vaishnava Sagara, Doyara Sagara, Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Vedase Karuna Kori. Vedase Karuna Kori. Vedase Karuna Kori.
Vedase Karuna Kori.
You are on mute, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Very nice to see you all. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anand.
Nam Prabhuji.
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna and Dandavat Pranam.
Pranams.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Puji Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams.
Dandavat Pranam. Jai Shri Prabhupada. So I'm just going to start with the introductory prayers like we always do. And I was also just opening the slides here. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Okay. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Devaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
So today we'll be doing chapter 6 and sorry, I'll have to log out and log in again because somehow the recording didn't start because I'm not logged in through the host account. So 1 second, I apologize. Okay, so now it's being recorded. So last time we did chapter 5, and this time we are doing chapter 6, which is Dhyana Yoga. And this is this is the end of the first section of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So last time we talked about Karma Yoga in chapter 5, and now we're speaking about Dhyana Yoga, which is Krishna's instructions on meditation, dhyana, how to achieve him through this process of dhyana. And this is a very wonderful chapter because so many people in this world, they are interested, very curious about meditation. Anyone you talk to, they're saying, I'm trying meditation. There's so much anxiety, distress in this world, and people are trying to solve it through meditation. Meditation is a very powerful means. But what's the best way of meditation? How do we, gain the perfection of meditation? That's something that is not so well known. or people are curious. And here Krishna is telling us that process. We are hearing it from God himself, from Krishna himself, how to meditate, how to worship and meditate upon him. So text 1 of chapter 6 begins like this. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Anashritta Karma Phalam Karyam Karma Karoti Ya Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha Na Niragnir Na Chakriya. So at the beginning of chapter 5, Arjuna had asked Krishna that, why are you asking me to work? Why are you asking me to fight in this battle if you think that knowledge or renunciation is better than work? Because in the previous chapter, chapter 4, Krishna talks about knowledge. So here Krishna is continuing that response. And he's telling what is true meditation, what is true dhyana, what is true renunciation, and what is true knowledge. So here he's speaking about renunciation in particular. So Krishna says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is a true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. So who is a true sannyasi? Krishna is answering that question here. Who is the real sannyasi? Sannyasi means renunciate. One who works but is unattached to the fruits of his work, and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. So one who's unattached to the fruits of his work, and he works as he's obligated, out of duty, out of a detachment, but isn't an escapist, is still doing his work, that person is a true renunciate, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. Because it's very easy, just let's say if there's a situation of conflict, a situation which is unpleasant to oneself, it's very easy to walk away. Well, okay, there's 3 levels of responses to that situation. If there's a problem somewhere, right? One is that we fight and we become really passionate and we go in the mode of passion and ignorance, right? Like we often see. Everyone does it, right? Kids do it, children, my little kids, sometimes they just really get into the fighting mood, and they're like, just 5 minutes before that, they're playing happily. They love each other to the sky, and 5 minutes later they're just like, I'm never going to talk to you again, and you're the worst person in the world. And so children do it, husband and wife do it. Prabhupada said actually not to take the arguments between husband and wife seriously, because he said they're like the rumbling of the clouds. The rumbling happens and then the cloud goes on, so life goes on, right? So husband and wife do it, countries do it. So one response is to get really in the mode of passion and to get into that mood of fighting. A better response is, I'm detached, and walk away. That response doesn't make the problem worse, but it doesn't make it better either. And it may make it worse by just walking away, but it doesn't make it better. And that's a form of renunciation. I'm detached. I don't want this to fight. I don't want to cause problems, and I don't want problems to be there, so I'll just walk away. And the third response is actually to, and that's the truly humble response, is actually to peacefully work it out, right? That takes a lot of practice. Sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes it's best to walk away, or sometimes it's best to fight, like Arjuna's having to fight. But generally speaking, the person who takes the effort and tries to work it out, doesn't just criticize and walk away, that person is taking the humble role. It takes humility to do that. And that's what Krishna is speaking about here. That one who's still working, to give up our work, like, look, there's nothing in this for me, so I'm not going to do it. To give up our work is easy. To walk away from something is easy. To look at, read the news and see this, people are suffering here and people are starving there, and I'm just going to eat very little because of that. That's easy. But to do something, to actually work selflessly, to work in the selfless mood of working when there's nothing in it for us, that is true renunciation. And that's very difficult to find. That's very difficult to develop also. And that's only possible when we are working for the Lord. Because ultimately we're human beings, we need reciprocation. So if we're not going to get the fruit from this world, if we're not looking for the fruits of this world, we must be seeking the fruit of love of God or the mercy of Krishna. So when we're working for Krishna, then only we can be the true renunciate. So the first section is text 1 through 9, in which Krishna is talking about the control of the mind, controlling the mind. He says, one who has controlled the mind has achieved the result of all spiritual practice. So one more example of this one. This is a very nice verse, one of my favorite verses of the Gita, actually. There's an example of Bhishma Dev and Vyasadev. So Bhishma Dev and Vyasadev were brothers. They were brothers. They were stepbrothers. How were they brothers? Does anyone know? Bhishma Dev and Vyasadev?
They were both children of Satyavati. One with
Yes, very nice. So Vyasadev was the actual son of Satyavati and Parashara Muni. And Bhishma Dev was the son of Ganga and Shantanu. And Shantanu was the husband of Ganga and Satyavati. So they were stepbrothers. They were half brothers in that way. Satyavati, when she was a virgin, then Parashara Muni, because Satyavati was a great soul. She was not an ordinary lady. And Parashara Muni is a great sage. And Parashara Muni knew that he had to be the father of Vyasadeva, who is a literary incarnation of the Lord. So he, through his mind, impregnated Satyavati, and she gave birth to Vyasadeva, yet she still retained her virginity. She was still, physically, materially untouched. And after that, Satyavati, later on, she actually marries Shantanu, who's the king, right? So she had two husbands in one sense. The first one being Parashara Muni, not really husband, but she first child was through Parashara Muni, and then she married Shantanu and had children. But all of her children through Shantanu died. So Vyasadeva was her only remaining son, and so once Bhishma Dev and Vyasadeva met, they're both stepbrothers, and Vyasadeva told Bhishma Dev that, because Bhishma Dev, remember, also took the vow of celibacy. That's why he's called Bhishma, to please his father, for the benefit of the kingdom. He took the vow of celibacy. Vyasadeva also took the vow of celibacy, right? He also is a sage, and in some ways he breaks that vow when Satyavati asks him to impregnate this is of previous times when the world was very pure. So this seems not good, but his half brothers had died, so their wives did not have children, and the dynasty had to go on. So Vyasadeva impregnated them with children, and thus Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and others were born. So both were celibate. So Vyasadeva told Bhishma one time that, I am a monk in the forest, and you are a monk in the city, in the palace. You are a sage in the palace. So we're both sages, But he says, but you are the greater sage. Because I am in the forest, and in the forest it's easy to be a sage. The objects of the senses are not there. But you are a sage in the kingdom. You're a greater sage because you can be surrounded by beautiful women, princesses, so much wealth, power, yet you are detached. Yet you're completely renounced. And that's the spirit of this movement in Srila Prabhupada. That Prabhupada wanted us to be of that caliber. To go to the forest and be meditators for ourselves is easy, right? We can all be great sadhus in our own little caves. It's not easy, but still it's easier. And it's selfish. I want self-realization. But what does Prahlad Maharaj says? That I'm not interested in going to the forest and finding Brahman, but rather I want to be in the cities and the towns and help those who are entangled in this material world. Help them come out of their ignorance and bring them to your lotus feet, to Krishna's lotus feet. So this is why we are always speaking about Krishna, preaching about Krishna, all these things, because that is the real spirit. That is the true renunciate. That is a true sage. So the goal of yoga practice is to control the mind. Any yoga practice. And that includes bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is also yoga practice. It's to control the mind. That's the goal. And that principle always remains true. This is why Rupa Goswami says that in the practice of bhakti, there's only one rule and one regulation. Always think of Krishna and never forget Krishna. Always think of Krishna and never forget Krishna. So this is actually a fact in my own little practice of Krishna consciousness. I see actually that the key thing always is the mind, right? Where's the mind? Just like we're chanting, right? We're chanting. But pure chanting, or you could say at least the practice of avoiding offenses begins with hearing the sound vibration, not distraction, and the more our mind is fixed on Krishna, on the sound vibration, the more effect we get from the chanting. So again, where is the mind? That's chanting, good chanting leads us to the point of remembering Krishna. This is why we chant. It's interesting in this chapter, Prabhupada again and again in the purport says, this can be attained by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. When he speaks of meditation, he again and again says, chant Hare Krishna. But the chanting of the Hare Krishna is a form of meditation. It fixes the mind on Krishna in a very natural way, without forcing it, without hurting it, without too much stress. It automatically fixes the mind on Krishna. So I was reading Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's words on his appearance day, and he was also saying that that hearing about Krishna and when we sing like Mangalarti or Kirtan, that focusing the mind on the words and on the meaning of the song is very important. The musical tune and all these things are less important, but where the mind is, that's most important. He said, his words were, I am more interested in the words and the meaning of the words than in the melody and all those things. That is true Kirtan. He was speaking about Kirtan. Because, again, the mind. Where is the mind? Then there's another quotation by Srila Prabhupada where he says, it is better to read a few verses of the Gita and meditate on them, to think of them throughout the day. Then he says, you read a lot, but then you forget all of it. And you don't try to apply it or remember it. It's an actual quotation. He encourages us to read a lot, but he says, but if you're going to read a lot and forget it all, you read so much that you don't remember anything, then he says that type of reading is not so good as reading less, or reading not less time, but reading more repeatedly and focused and remembering, meditating upon what we read. So Rupa Goswami's words are actually literal. We think, well, yeah, he's saying that, but the only rule is always chant Hare Krishna, and because our whole process is chanting. That is true, but it's true because it leads to this point. But if we chant and we don't make any effort to think of Krishna, it'll be very slow, because the goal is to always think of Krishna and never forget Krishna. And that's the commonality in all the devotees of the Lord, in all the services that they do. Like Srimati Radharani, for example. In the spiritual world, most likely she's not chanting 60 rounds every day on her beats. Why is she not? Because she's always thinking of Krishna, never forgetting Krishna. She doesn't need to. She's not on the path of sadhana like we are. Arjuna was fighting on the battle, and Prabhupada actually says, there's a quote from Prabhupada where he said, Arjuna did not have time to chant his 16 rounds of Japamala because he was fighting a battle, but he was continuously thinking of Krishna. And of course, Krishna was right in front of him as his charioteer. In the case of Haridas Thakur, he was chanting 192 rounds a day. He was chanting 23 hours a day. Why? Because that's how he was always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna. So whatever the service may be, the rule and the regulation is always think of Krishna, never forget Krishna. The service is meant to do this for us. The service is meant to take us to the platform of always remembering Krishna. And that is the test of the power, or you could say the effect of the service. If that service is making us forget Krishna, then unless told otherwise by the spiritual master Krishna, we should not do it. Just like some devotees were doing the service, a very wonderful service of having a rock band, being part of a rock band. And so they made a rock band for Krishna, and they would sing songs, they would appeal to the young crowd, and so many young people were becoming devotees. Like they were called Straight Edge, 108 band, or Straight Edge. They became actually a phenomena during that time. They became so popular. But with rock bands, as you know, there's so much women, wine, drugs, and it started affecting the devotees' minds. They started to, they themselves started to vanish. They would, so many women were starting to follow them, all these things. And their spiritual master told them to stop the band. They closed the band. And you think, well, such great service. But no, it's not service. If we are not able to think of Krishna, then if we ourselves fall in Maya, if we, then what is the point? So chanting is always being done. Srimati Radharani is always singing the glories of Krishna, hearing his glories, but it just takes different forms. In the spiritual world, it takes a certain form. Here, it takes a certain form, because remembering Krishna means chanting his names. Chanting his names means that we will remember him. Chanting is done in the spiritual world as well as here. And other services are also done because the goal is to always think of Krishna and never forget him. So here we go forward. Okay. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So this is what I was speaking about. For one who's controlled the mind, it's already attained, because the goal of these spiritual practices is to fix the mind on Krishna. And not just to control the mind and control it by looking at a black dot. No, when our mind is fixed on Krishna, that is the goal of meditation. That's not easy to do, because what to speak of fixing our mind on Krishna, we don't even see Krishna. The perfect yogi is always seeing Krishna within his heart. and the experience is very tangible. It's like a face-to-face experience. So such a person is, for such a person, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Remember, I was telling you last time how one of the themes of the Gita is being equipoised in honor and dishonor, right? Being undisturbed, which means practically in our Krishna consciousness, going on with our service, even amidst honor and dishonor. Text 8, a person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So again, equipoise, seeing everything material to be the same. It's of the same material nature. What's the difference? What's the ultimate difference between a stone and gold? We are, Prabhupada said, we're all running after the yellow stool, which we call gold. But for a self-realized soul, it's like yellow stool. What's the difference? You can't eat a pebble and you can't eat gold, right? It's the same thing, just a transformation of it. And because it's a little shiny and it's rarely found, it's hard to find it, we put such a high price tag to it. And then we spend most of our life working day and night just so we can have some quantity of that stone, which is yellow in color. What is the purpose? So a devotee works hard, like we were saying in the previous one, but he works hard for self-realization. He makes an endeavor, he strives for self-realization. He doesn't strive for material advancement, for only material things. Text 9. A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral mediators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. Wow, how amazing this is. A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral mediators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. So one of the teachings of the Bhagavatam is not to see people in terms of friends and enemies. You know, this person is my friend. You know, this person is envious. And this person is so bad because they are envious. This person is so mean. But again, they're all pure spirit souls. They're currently covered by certain conditionings. But everyone can change. The envious will become friendly. The friends will become envious. And so the devotee sees everyone with equal mind. Equal mind does mean also that you reciprocate accordingly. When you're equal to someone, then you also reciprocate equally. Meaning, if someone is offering you more and is more affectionate, you reciprocate accordingly. Like Krishna says, I'm equal to everyone, and therefore he says, as they come to me, I reward them accordingly. So he says, as they come to me, I reward them accordingly. So if someone takes 500 steps towards Krishna, Krishna takes 1,000 steps towards them. If someone takes 50 steps towards him, Krishna takes 100 steps towards them. So although he's taking different steps to different people, one person 100 steps, another person 1,000 steps, he's still being equal to them because he's responding equally. Equal doesn't mean necessarily the same. Equal means the same principle. So So therefore, people who make groups and make friends and enemies, they're not very self-realized. Even amongst devotees, we see some devotees are just they're always making their group, for no reason. They just want to have their group, and they want to make their own areas of groups. But a devotee may be serving in a certain association, but he is equally kind and affectionate to everyone based upon their quality. So to a tiger, we're kind and affectionate to the tiger by staying away from it. And because that's the way he wants us to be. The tiger shows its power by scaring everyone and says, "Get away from me." So we stay away from it. And the devotee is kind to the cow by not killing it and by giving it affection, because the cow is giving affection through her milk. So that's being equal in mind to all beings. So Krishna now tells us, how can we control this rascal mind? Because this is Arjuna's problem. His mind keeps on, disturbing him. And for fighting, you need complete focus. To win this battle, he'll need complete focus, complete being fixed in his goal. So Krishna is saying, what is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. For one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So, we control this mind by first linking it to Krishna, and by getting a higher taste, by applying the mind to something very wonderful, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, something fully satisfying and divine, we automatically renounce the desire for lower gratification. By the experience of a higher taste, we can give up the lower taste. That's text 2. Then text 3, Krishna is saying that the means is different for different levels of people. For the neophyte person, work is the means of attaining the goal. Working in an honest way, working for God, working for one's, out of duty, purifies one's existence. But for one who's more advanced, one who's elevated in yoga, giving up the material activities and only engaging in spiritual activities is said to be the means. Cessation of all material activities, which means engaging only in spiritual activities, is the means of attaining the Lord. And this process of working for Krishna, focusing one's mind on Krishna, so much so that we automatically don't have space for material thoughts in our mind. This is the process of bhakti. Rather than controlling the senses, to engage them in something positive, engage them in thinking of Krishna. The Bhagavatam's yoga prescribes controlling desire by rechanneling that desire toward Krishna. Narada Muni explains this to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Many persons have attained liberation simply by thinking of Krishna with great attention and giving up sinful activities. This great attention may be due to lusty desires, inimical feelings, fear, affection, or devotional service. I shall now explain how one receives Krishna's mercy simply by concentrating one's mind upon him. So even being fearful of God, even being inimical towards God, purifies the mind. Because the point is, again, remembering. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. If we're remembering God, even negatively, it will purify our heart. It will purify our mind. The example of lusty desires is the gopis. The gopis, their mind and heart was fixed on Krishna as their ultimate lover. But because their lover was Krishna, their hearts became completely purified. Their mind and heart was completely purified because they knew that only Krishna is their life and soul. And by thinking of him constantly, they were able to become fixed in devotion. My dear King Yudhishthira, the gopis by their lusty desires, Kamsa by his fear, Shishupal and other kings by envy, the Yadus by their familial relationship, with Krishna, you Pandavas by your great affection for Krishna, and we, the great devotees, the general devotees, by our devotional service, have obtained the mercy of Krishna. Once the beginning of the ladder is called Yoga Rurukshu stage, and the highest rung is called Yoga Rudha stage. Stages in yoga practice, now Krishna describes from text 10 to 27. And these stages in yoga practice are actually the same as Patanjali's Eightfold Yoga system, or rather, Patanjali's Eightfold Yoga system is the same as Krishna's system. Because Krishna's system came first. Krishna is the one who set up this system, right? It comes from Krishna. So the first 4 stages of yoga are the yamas, the rules, the niyamas, the regulations, the asanas, the physical alignment, how we sit, pranayama, breathing. The second 4 stages are pratyahara, which is withdrawing the sense organs from objects. Dharana, I apologize, somehow the text didn't come out right, but that's okay. This is dharana, drawing the object of concentration in the mind. Dhyana, meditating on the content of concentration. And samadhi, complete absorption in the object of meditation. So this is the Eightfold Yoga system. And the first 2, it starts with yama and niyamas, rules and regulations. So our modern yogis today, they just want to, do yoga and they can do whatever else they want. But that's not true yoga. That physical yoga is just exercise. That's not real yoga. Yoga is when we follow rules and regulations. Asana means physical alignment. And pranayama means breathing control. So this is Krishna's system, and we see that just by doing these things, by properly sitting, by breathing properly, so many diseases are solved and avoided. By following the rules and regulations, rising early in the morning, eating fresh foods, eating a vegetarian diet, by just this healthy, nice lifestyle, most of the diseases are avoided. Pranayama is so powerful. Just by proper pranayama, so many diseases of the stomach, of anxiety, mental tension, everything go away. It's unbelievable, actually. People don't realize the power of yoga. So many diseases are cured because this is Krishna's system. So that's the first 4 stages. The second one is pratyahara. We withdraw the sense organs from their objects. And how do we do that? By dharana, drawing the object of concentration in the mind. By placing Krishna within our mind, we start to look inward. And when we look inward, we draw the senses from their objects. Right? Then, once we bring the object of our meditation within, then dhyana is the process of meditating on it. Meditating on the content of concentration. That's this chapter. How do we meditate on Krishna? And samadhi means complete absorption in the objects of meditation. It's the stage of perfection, samadhi. Prabhupada says, by practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from mature concepts. This is the primary characteristic of the yoga principle. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence, without any of the misgivings of identifying the self with the superself. Yoga practice is more or less based on the principles of the Patanjali system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the soul, the individual soul, with the supersoul. And the monists think this to be liberation. But they do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. So the yama, the first stage, are the rules. And here are, you can read through the chapter in your own time. You must read through the chapter as you've been doing for the other chapters. These are the rules that Krishna speaks of. Go to a secluded place. Regulate your eating and sleeping, work and recreation. Krishna says one cannot be a yogi if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little. Everything needs to be regulated. The third is the practice of celibacy. Yoga begins by celibacy. And finally, giving up intoxication. So these 4 principles, no meat, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no intoxication, are very basic fundamental principles of yoga practice. The niyamas are regulations. So the rules are things that you must do. Niyamas are things that you should not do, meaning that you should not talk unnecessarily or engage in idle gossip. Avoid prajalpa. Avoid tamasic foods, meat, etc. They say, well, in the rules, there wasn't no rule just to eat vegetarian, but in the regulation it said, don't eat meat, don't eat foods that are in the mode of ignorance, foods that are putrid, that are very pungent, that are very hot, that will bring down the energies of the body to the baser levels. Then asana, physical alignment. We see that Srila Prabhupada also taught us asana. In most of his recordings of japa, he tells the devotees who are around him a very famous sentence. He says, sit properly. Even in chanting, it's very important how we are sitting, because Prabhupada said that's important. Sit properly. Lay kusha grass. Have a peaceful surrounding. Not sit high or too low. In a sacred place, seeing the tip of nose and deerskin. Pranayama is the control of the breath, the balance inward breath with the outward. This is pranayama. So asana was this. One quick point in asana I forgot the reason why they would sit on deer skin, and this was of a deer that had died naturally, or you sometimes see tiger skin, any skin of the animal naturally, is because if you sit on deer skin, it's actually said that then snakes don't come and bite you. The reptiles, the insects, anything poisonous, it stays away from you. And this is why the sages would sit on deer skin, because when you're many hours in the forest, eventually the snakes start to come and notice you. So the deer skin keeps them away. During meditation, they won't come on you then. And this is pranayama. Pratyahara, withdrawing the sense organs from the objects. That is focusing our mind and our heart on Krishna within the heart. Dharana, drawing the object of concentration in the mind. Pratyahara was drawing in the sense organs. So not trying to go around satisfying our senses. Dharana is putting Krishna within the mind. Dhyana means meditating on him, and samadhi is complete absorption in Krishna. So then in text 30, so next section after this one is text 28 to 36, where Krishna is saying perfection of yoga is realizing Krishna as a super soul. So he says, there's many different types of yoga. In some forms of yoga, people are only doing physical exercise. In some forms of yoga, people are just focusing their mind on a dot, on a black dot. But the highest form of yoga is not to focus your mind on a black dot. What will the black dot do for you? But is to focus your mind on Krishna. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me, Krishna says. The one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost. So his meditation is only Krishna. Wherever he sees Krishna. Krishna is always with him. He's never lost to Krishna, and Krishna never loses him. And that's our goal. Prabhupada said that if we cannot chant, 64 rounds, we must always chant in our mind, in our heart. After chanting our 16 rounds, we're continuously chanting by focusing on Krishna. Arjuna rejects controlling the mind as impractical because his mind appears uncontrollable. So after Krishna tells all of this, Arjuna says, Chanchalahimana Krishna Pramati Balavadridam. That this mind, Arjuna says, oh Krishna, I think is more difficult to control than the wind itself. The mind is chanchala. What can I do? So Krishna assures Arjuna that it is possible by constant practice and detachment. So after Arjuna says, this is impossible, the mind is impossible to control, Krishna tells him that no, through practice and detachment, it can be controlled. These two things are necessary. One has to practice. Practice makes a man perfect. And just practice enough won't do the trick. One also has to be detached. And finally, Krishna talks about the destination of the unsuccessful yogi. Because, see, why does this topic come here? Because Arjuna tells Krishna, after Krishna describes the process of meditation, which he did back here, right? Dhana and dhyana, all these things. Then Arjuna says, look, Krishna, I'm not a born yogi. I'm a warrior. I can't do this. Forget this meditation. And then Krishna says, no, you can do it, Arjuna, through practice and detachment. And then Arjuna again thinks, well, but what if I'm not successful? Because I still don't think I can do it. So I'm probably going to be unsuccessful. And so then he asks this question to Krishna. Almighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? So he says, what's going to happen to such a person who takes to spiritual life and he's neither successful in spiritual life nor is he successful in material life? He gave up his material life for spiritual life, when he gave it up, he becomes unsuccessful in material life, which we see all the time. But now he'll be unsuccessful in spiritual life also. So is he like a riven cloud? He has no position in any sphere. Krishna responds, the Supreme Personality of God had said, Sanapratha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities, does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Such a powerful, wonderful passage. This is the seeds of karma, that the description of the law of karma that Krishna here is describing in the verses of the Gita. The Gita is actually also teaching us about karma. One who does good, Krishna is saying, is never overcome by evil. The transcendentalist on this path is engaged in auspicious activities, therefore they never meet with destruction. Krishna's promising here in some ways, he's giving us heart that if we are Krishna's devotees do not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. You see? So we can take strength from this. We can heed Krishna's advice to become his devotee, because he's saying that if you're my devotee, you won't be destroyed. Like I was listening to a lecture yesterday, my Guru Maharaj is giving in Mayapur, and he was saying how no one has ever become a pauper by giving to Krishna. When we give to Krishna, Krishna gives 1,000 times back. People have become billionaires by serving God, but no one has ever become a pauper by serving God. Because whatever we give to Krishna, Krishna gives us back 1,000-fold. And that's why it's impossible to meet with destruction if we're serving the Lord, because Krishna is protecting us, and Krishna is saying that such a person is never overcome by evil and is fixed in transcendence. It is better to be a failure in spiritual life than a success in material life. This is a statement that Ravindra Swarup Prabhu told me when I was doing my Bhakti Shastri. He said, it's better to be a failure in spiritual life than a success in material life. This is what Krishna is saying here also. That even if you fail, you'll never be destroyed. You will continue from where you left off. But if you pursue material life and you fail, even if you succeed, if you pursue material life and you succeed, you're still a failure, because at the end of life, you lose it all. You lose every bit of it. But even the little spiritual life that you do stays with you for so many lifetimes. For eternity, it's with you. And that's where you start from, wherever you exactly left. So, Krishna, there's 3 categories of people that the unsuccessful transcendentalist reincarnates into. He reincarnates into the families of the Shrimatam, the families of the prosperous, the wealthy families, the Shuchinam of the pious, Dhimatam of those who are endowed with great wisdom, meaning the devotees of the Lord, who are Dhiras. So depending upon our result of spiritual practice, the degree of spiritual practice, and the degree of advancement that we make, we'll take birth in one of these families. The most auspicious being taking birth in the family of a devotee, or growing up in the family of a devotee, which is Dhimatam, the last one. Lord Chaitanya also places great souls in fallen families, however, as well. So we see in our movement that some of our great spiritual teachers and leaders came from very simple fallen families. But at the age of 14, they ran away from home and they joined Srila Prabhupada. And when they joined Srila Prabhupada, they very quickly became self-realized souls. Like very quickly, they made so much advancement. And so then Prabhupada commented, he mentioned how Lord Chaitanya had put these souls who were actually very pious into random families, you could say, materialistic families, just so Lord Chaitanya's movement could spread all over the world. Because if they had to be born in a pious family and they're born in the land of India, then they wouldn't come to America. But right now they're kind of mostly we see that these great souls are mostly in spread everywhere, and Lord Chaitanya's movement is spreading to every nook and corner. The famous example of this was presented by Lord Chaitanya, who accepted Haridas Thakur as one of his most important disciples. Although Thakur Haridas happened to take his birth in a Muslim family, he was elevated to the post of Namacharya by Lord Chaitanya due to his rigidly attended principle of chanting 300,000 holy names of the Lord daily. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And because he chanted the holy name of the Lord constantly, it is understood that in his previous life he must have passed through all the ritualistic methods of the Vedas, known as Shabda Brahma. Unless, therefore, one is purified, one cannot take to the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna. So, this is the fact that Haridas Thakur was actually born in a Muslim family. He was not born in a Brahmin family. At that time, there was a lot of, you could say, stigma associated with lower birth, and there was the belief was that people born of outside Indian families, Westerners, Indian Muslims, all these were of the lower caste, so to say. But Lord Chaitanya, he broke all these caste boundaries. He broke these boundaries of birth and of status. And he said that everyone can attain the Lord by taking his names. So Haridas Thakur became a very great devotee of the Lord, Namacharya, and he was a Muslim person who was chanting all day long. But we can understand here Prabhupada saying that because he was such a great personality so quickly and always chanting, that in his previous life he must have been engaged in Krishna consciousness. So and so Lord Chaitanya showed by his example that two points. One is that one can chant, or the spiritual progress is never lost. So though very ordinary from outside, but by his birth, but because of his previous life, and we know he was Lord Brahma, he was so purified in heart, and he had passed through all of these ritualistic methods of purification. Therefore, he was so purified he could chant due to his past activities, right? And secondly, that although the devotees are born in a pious situation, their external birth is not so important. But what's important is that they're born with that level of spiritual enlightenment as what was where they left off in their previous life. And so that's really where the pious birth is. Really the point of pious birth comes in, is how pious are we at our birth from the beginning of that life? How much are we attracted to God, to Krishna? Then Prabhupada, as a side point, is also mentioning a very interesting point here, that unless one is purified, one cannot take to the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy names of the Lord. That means all the devotees who are chanting in their present or past life must have become very purified. Therefore, they're able to chant. And that the cause of that purification may be the mercy of the devotee. So the quality of a devotee is being described in detail here. And read through the example of Garuda and the sparrow who lost its kids in the ocean. And that's the level of determination that's needed. When Krishna sees that determination, then he sends us his grace. So Prabhupada gives this very nice example of the sparrow. One time there's a sparrow sitting on the beach, and she was sitting on her eggs. And one time the ocean god thought that it would do a nasty joke on the sparrow. And it made its waves overflow. And the waves swept up on the beach higher than they normally do and took the eggs and went back, the eggs went into the ocean. So the sparrow was so heartbroken. But she said that I will empty out this ocean. And so she, beak by beak, takes water from the ocean and starts to try to empty it out. Spits it somewhere else and comes back, takes a little water in her beak, spits it out. And her determination was so strong that Garuda happened to be flying by and he saw what this bird is doing. And so then Garuda said, though this bird is completely incapable of doing this, is so determined. And so Garuda says, I will help this bird. And so Garuda comes down and says, I'll do the same. I'll empty it out with my beak. And when the ocean god sees this, Garuda is the carrier of Lord Narayan, of course, right? Lord Vishnu. Then the ocean becomes very afraid and says, whatever you need, I'll give it to you. And immediately returns the eggs to the sparrow. So the moral of this is that though we don't have the strength to become perfect yogis, it's impossible for us to control the mind. If we surrender to Krishna wholeheartedly, then Krishna will help us reach that goal. So two things are necessary to reach the goal. One is effort and the other is grace. By our efforts, the grace is encouraged. The grace, we become recipients of the grace. And it is actually the grace that liberates us. But in order to get the grace, we must perform sincerely the activities of Krishna consciousness so that we get Krishna's mercy. And that's the discussion about the cat school and the monkey school. In the Vaishnava Sampradaya of Sri Ramanujacharya, there's a big debate that what comes first? Is it our effort that comes first, or is it God's mercy that's most important? So the monkey school said that it's our effort that matters the most. And our reaching God is like a monkey holding on to his mother with the sheer strength that it has. And then because it holds on, therefore the mother takes the monkey everywhere. The other school says that no, it is the Lord who is saving us. And that's called the cat school. The Lord is showing his mercy. And we have to make some effort, but that's not very important. So we are actually part of the cat school. We believe that it is actually the mercy of Krishna only that can carry us. But however, even as a cat, we have a great responsibility. Even if we are a devotee cat, right, we have a great responsibility to put in the effort also. Because Krishna can give his mercy when we prepare the heart, when we put in some effort. And so finally, this is the last slide. The topmost yogi is being described by Krishna, and you'll see that consistently every single chapter of the Gita ends with or contains a verse that tells us that bhakti is the highest. It's the highest process. In the chapter on Jnana, Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudev Sarvamriti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. That the goal of Jnana is Vasudeva. Similarly, here Krishna says, text 46, a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstance, be a yogi. So first of all, Krishna tells that the yogi is highest amongst all classes of people. And who is that highest yogi? Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenantaratmanam Shraddhavan bhajate yo mam samyukta tamo mataha. And of all the yogis, the one who with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. He is the most intimately united with Krishna in yoga because he's engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. It's because the yogi thinks of Krishna always and with great faith. Okay, so here we go. So wonderful. We ended right on time today. We have about 10 minutes of questions and we can ask now. Yes, Prashant.
So my question is actually from the slide where you were showing the Patanjali Sutras, and I
Yes.
remember something that you said that you yourself struggle with really good food, and then so controlling desires. I myself struggle with food as well, and
Yes.
other things. And then Arjuna also said that it's very difficult. So just practical, real world suggestions from you, maybe how you deal with that, which can help us deal with our this sense control. I get it intellectually, I just can't seem to implement it.
Yes, very nice, wonderful. Yes, so practically, how do we do this? So Krishna says practice and detachment, and our experience is that the easiest way, the really the only realistic way to practice, to become accomplished in something, is to join a group of people who are doing the same thing, right? Just like I'll give you the example of my experience in weight loss, right? Doing physical exercise. If I try, I make a regulation, I make a determination that I'll run 30 minutes a day. Then if I try to go and run, after 5 minutes, I'll stop running. Less than that, 3 minutes, I'll start running, and I'm fully convinced that now I'm going to die if I'm going to even run 10 more seconds, and I will stop running. It's a fact. But when I'm, they have these group classes, whatever they call it, boot camp, right? If I ever went for a class, it was a boot camp and there's an instructor there and all the students are there, and they would start exercising, I would do a full hour, and halfway through I would feel I'm dying, but I would still keep doing it and I would be fine. So sense control of the senses is only possible if we find someone who can help us, someone or a group of people who can help us, who we can do it with, who are doing it, and we do it in their company. Just like chanting, right? Chanting was so difficult, all these things, but then I found a very nice japa group. I joined that, and that inspires me to wake up in the morning and chant. And this devotee has taught me also how to chant nicely, better than what I used to chant before. So even for chanting, we need association. Similarly, to control the senses, Srila Prabhupada is given the process. He says, first and foremost, eat only Krishna Prasadam. If we only eat Krishna Prasadam, that controls 90% of our eating habits. Why? Because I was thinking my whole life, somehow I've been practicing part of this movement since my childhood. So my whole life, I've been eating prasadam and kind of leading this life. But I was thinking one day that if I didn't have this principle, right, of only eating prasad, if I didn't have, so to say, this restriction, then that means I could have gone to any restaurant in town, but any restaurant in the city. And I was thinking, someone like me, if that was the case, no wonder people become like this big. Because if you can go and eat at any restaurant in town, how would you stop eating? Like one day you'd go and have a pizza, next day you have Chinese food, this or 3 times a day, and we just eat and eat. By eating only Krishna Prasadam, our mind and senses become controlled because we cannot eat everywhere that we go. We go in the store and there's 100 items, there's 1,000 items. Only 5 or 10 of them are vegetarian, vegan, or free from onions and garlic. So that automatically controls our senses. So very potent. But even then in Krishna Prasadam, we need that association. We need the association to help us eat less, inspire us to not eat so much at night so we can wake up in the morning. So practically speaking, like also when I was a student, there's so much, you could say, sense enjoyment in the college, and a lot of good things happen, but also bad things also there. And the thing that protected me was the fact that I was living with devotees. And that association effortlessly allowed me to control my senses. It's like it's effortless because it's not restricting the senses, but you have something even better to engage yourself in. You have something even better to engage your mind and heart in, or better friends, so you don't choose the bad association. We also talked about in an earlier class how our daily spiritual practice can help us in controlling the senses, our sadhana. Just like Madan Gopal Prabhu had given the example that if we have a good breakfast in the morning, then later on we'll be less driven to eat more at lunch and dinner because we had a good breakfast. In the same way, if we do our sadhana nicely, we're less likely to be attracted by the sense objects because we got our spiritual nourishment in the morning. So these are all different ways and techniques and ways in which we can control our senses.
Thank you so much. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashanti. Very nice question that you had also. Bhadra Krishna Prabhu, your hand is.
Hare Krishna Prabhu,
Hare
a wonderful class. Oh, this is a great question. Actually, this has been on my mind for past couple of weeks. Krishna is non-different towards any living entity. And especially for the Pandavas, they were all dear to him. Like they were very... So why is it that he picked only Arjuna out of all the 5 Pandavas to speak the Bhagavad Gita in the middle of the battlefield and not pick Yudhishthira or Bhim or Nakul or Sahadev? Why only Arjuna? What was so special? Is it that because Arjuna was very close to him, or was it some other reason that he picked only Arjuna?
So that's a little difficult to understand because Krishna has his Leela and his Leelas are completely independent. But part of that, I mean, given the very point of Leela, we can understand that Krishna has different relationships with his eternally liberated souls, right? So for example, he spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. But if we read the Bhagavatam and other books, we understand that Krishna would never say no to a request of Maharaj Yudhishthira. So if Maharaj Yudhishthira asked Krishna something, Krishna would never say no to it because he was so dear to him. Maharaj Yudhishthira was so exalted, is described, that when he would walk a few inches above the earth. He wouldn't even touch the earth. So one could say, oh, Krishna spoke the Gita to Arjuna because Krishna says in the Gita, the Pandavas, I am Partha. That means Arjuna was most dear to him. But his other devotees are equally dear. It's very hard to say. Prabhupada says in spiritual life, there can be many best. Like he's the best devotee and he's the best devotee and she's the best devotee and everyone's the best because it's spiritual. It's unlimited. So you can have many bests, not just one best. So Arjun was the best devotee, but Maharaj Yudhishthira was also. Bhima and Nakul and Sahadev were also. Their life and soul was Krishna. So Arjuna, in some sense, was Krishna's most intimate devotee. That's one response. But main thing is that most likely it's that Krishna is just reciprocating. He's doing different leelas with different devotees. With Bhima, he was doing a different leela. With Yudhishthira, he was doing a different thing. And he's instructing. For us, the Gita is very important because we're sadhakas. But in the spiritual world, every pastime is equally sweet and equally important. And he's instructing the world through all of these devotees, not just through Arjuna. Like he takes Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira is so distraught after the battle of Kurukshetra. He comes to Krishna for advice, just like Arjuna does. But at that point, Krishna doesn't speak to Yudhishthira what he spoke to Arjuna, which he could have done to dispel Yudhishthira's grief. But rather, he takes Maharaj Yudhishthira to Bhishma Dev. And he does that to glorify his devotee Bhishma Dev. And as a result, also appease and please his devotee Maharaj Yudhishthira. So Krishna is, mastermind genius, right? He takes Yudhishthira there, and with one stone, right, he liberates two birds. So Krishna does that all the time. He allows his devotees to be glorified, and then Bhishma Dev speaks knowledge that's equally good as the Gita, and then Maharaj Yudhishthira is very satisfied. Thank you. Very nice. Shyama Kishori Mataji.
Hare Krishna, bro. I just wanted to add something.
Oh,
I just wanted to say that, as you said, that one who has controlled the mind has achieved the result of all spiritual practice.
yes.
And you also said that for Krishna, the one who sees me everywhere and sees everything as me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Thank you.
Such a nice verse that you chose. Such a nice verse. That's the perfection of yoga, that we're seeing Krishna always. That was Prahlad Maharaj, right? He saw Krishna in every pillar, in every place. My Lord is there. My Lord is protecting me. In every situation, in every person, in every place, the devotee sees Krishna. Krishna's hand is there everywhere. When someone is unkind to him, the devotee thinks that it is Krishna who is teaching me something, is chastising me through this person. If someone is embracing him, the devotee thinks that it is Krishna who's wanting to embrace me through this person. Of course, he also understands that there's also, Krishna may want him to fight like Arjuna did, that this is not Krishna, this is evil coming to me. But even in that situation, the devotee knows that Krishna has arranged this situation for my betterment, for my upliftment, for my betterment. And whatever the situation may be, I must do the best in the situation so that Krishna can fulfill his desire through me. I can become an instrument of God, right? Instrument for God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice comment. Shama Gopala Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So in the Arjuna asked, if I fail, then what happens? So Krishna says, anyone who is devotee, destruction doesn't come to him, whether he is in material world or spiritual world, right? And in one of the shloka in
Yes.
Bhagavad Gita, it says, the one who is elevated as a pure devotee, it takes away from him everything, his wealth, his fame, his
No, that's a Nami Bhakti Yashadi. And then in the Bhagavatam he says, Yasyaham anugrahami harishyam tad dhanam shanai. I take away everything. Yes.
And here also Hare, right?
Yes.
Hare Krishna. So how do you relate these two things together when he's saying this, nothing?
Yes. Yes, so that harana, that taking away, Kshipram Bhavati, Harishyam Tad Dhanam Shanai, Krishna's taking is his protecting us from destruction, right? His taking away everything is his mercy upon us, is his great benediction upon us, is him protecting us from so much difficulty. Just like Srila Prabhupada lost his whole business. But because that happened, therefore he, became a sannyasi and, took that opportunity to become a sannyasi and came and liberated all of us and spread this movement all around the world. So that is the Lord's protection. The protection that Krishna here is speaking about is spiritual protection, not necessarily material protection, although he protects materially also. But the main way he protects is spiritually, because he knows that this is the best for the soul, for our soul. This is the best thing for our soul. This will protect the devotee. Just like there's one devotee who was a devotee and he was planning in his mind to go and perform a very sinful activity, something very, very bad. And before that, he was able to do that. Krishna arranged that he got in a car accident, and he was telling this. So Krishna stopped him from getting on the wrong path. So any reverses that come in our life, any reverse that comes in our life, the devotee knows is a benediction by the Lord. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually says that the only auspicious thing in the material world is that there's suffering in the world, because this suffering becomes a catalyst for our surrender to Krishna, for our knowing Krishna. That's why it's auspicious. Whereas material happiness makes us forget Krishna. So in what way is it auspicious? Right? So not that we are unhappy, we're very happy, but the point is that we are more interested in knowing Krishna. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, bro.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Any other final comment, question? It's a very wonderful chapter, very deep chapter. Please read it in your own time. And on the group, I'll share the homework and the study guide, everything again. If any of you joined recently, you can always put something on the group, and the other students, forward it. So that's the main way of being successful is association, right? So use the help of your friends, very good, and other classmates. So, okay, thank you, everyone. We'll continue next week with chapter 7. We're really burning through it. In 18 weeks, we're almost halfway through. We'll be done with the entire Gita.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhu.
Thank you, Hare.
Hare
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
so much, Prabhu. Hare
Thank you, Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Wow.